darkness has always held a primal grip on human fear, a void where the unknown festers. For most, turning off the lights is a simple act, a prelude to rest. But for me, it's a descent into terror. My name is Eliza Carter, and this is the story of why I never sleep with the lights off. A tale woven from dread, loss, and the unrelenting shadows that claimed my life piece by piece. It began in a small, isolated town, in a house that seemed ordinary but hid a malevolent secret. Over 10 harrowing nights, I learned that some things in the dark are more than just figments of the mind. This is my confession, my warning, and my plea to anyone who thinks the dark is empty. Keep the lights on. The house on Marrow Lane was a relic, its weathered clapboards sagging under decades of neglect. I moved there in the fall of 2024, seeking solitude after a bitter divorce. The rent was cheap, the town quiet, and the isolation suited me. The house stood alone, bordered by a dense pine forest that seemed to swallow the moonlight. The realtor had warned me about the flickering electricity, blaming old wiring, but I didn't mind. I liked the idea of a fixer-upper, something to keep my hands busy and my thoughts distracted. The first night I noticed the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but a heavy, suffocating absence of sound. No crickets, no wind, just a void. My bedroom, a small space with a single window, felt colder than the rest of the house. I left the bedside lamp on, its yellow glow casting long shadows across the peeling wallpaper. As I drifted to sleep, I heard a faint creak, like footsteps on the hardwood floor. I told myself it was the house settling, but my heart raced. I checked the hallway, empty. The doors were locked, the windows secure. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the edges of the light. The next morning, I found scratches on the bedroom door frame. Shallow but precise, like claw marks. I blamed a stray animal, though I hadn't seen any pets in the neighborhood. That night, I double-checked the locks and kept every light in the house burning. Sleep came reluctantly, and when it did, it was plagued by dreams of a figure standing just beyond the lamp's glow, its face obscured, but its presence undeniable. By the third night, the house felt alive in a way I couldn't explain. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were breathing. I started hearing whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from inside the walls. They were most distinct in the bedroom, growing louder when I turned off the lights. I experimented once, flicking the switch to plunge the room into darkness. The whispers surged, a chorus of overlapping voices, hissing words I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. Stay, watch, see. I scrambled to turn the light back on and the voices stopped instantly. My hands shook as I sat on the bed, clutching the lamp like a lifeline. The scratches on the doorframe were deeper now, and I noticed something new. A faint outline on the wall, like a shadow burned into the paint. It resembled a hand, fingers splayed, reaching toward the bed. I told myself it was pareidolia, the mind's trick of seeing patterns, but I couldn't look at it without feeling a chill. I called the realtor the next day, asking about the house's history. She was evasive, mentioning only that the previous tenant had left abruptly. When I pressed, she hung up. That night, I set up my phone to record audio while I slept, hoping to capture the whispers. At 3:17 a.m., the recording caught something. A low, guttural voice saying, "Eliza, turn it off." My name, spoken clearly in a house where I lived alone. I didn't sleep again that night, the lamp blazing until dawn. The whispers weren't the only anomaly. On the fifth night, I noticed the mirror in the hallway. It was an antique, its frame ornate but tarnished, hanging opposite my bedroom door. I hadn't paid it much attention until I caught a glimpse of movement in its reflection, a dark shape darting behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. The reflection showed nothing unusual, just my pale, sleep-deprived face staring back. I avoided the mirror after that, covering it with a sheet. But the next night, the sheet was on the floor, folded neatly, as if someone had placed it there. The mirror's surface was cold to the touch, colder than the surrounding air. I stood before it, heart pounding, and saw my breath fogging the glass. Then, in the reflection, I saw it. A figure standing behind me, tall and thin, its face a blur of shadow. I screamed and turned, but no one was there. The reflection was normal again, but my skin prickled with the certainty that I wasn't alone. I tore the mirror from the wall and shoved it into the basement, locking the door behind it. That night, the whispers were louder, angrier, and the scratches on the doorframe spread to the walls, forming jagged patterns like a child's scrawl. I kept every light on, but the shadows seemed to grow darker, pooling in corners where the light should have reached. Desperate for answers, I visited the town library, a cramped building staffed by an elderly woman named Mrs. Hargrove. I asked about the house on Marrow Lane, and her face tightened. She told me the house had a reputation, though she wouldn't elaborate. Instead, she handed me a faded newspaper clipping from 1973. It described a family who lived in the house, a mother, father, and 2 children, who vanished without a trace. The article mentioned strange behavior. The family stopped leaving the house, kept all lights on, and boarded up their windows. The police found no bodies, only scratches on the walls and a shattered mirror in the basement. Mrs. Hargrove whispered, "Some say they never left." Her eyes darted to the library's dark corners, and she urged me to leave the house. I laughed it off, clinging to rationality, but her words haunted me. That night, I found a child's drawing under my bed, a crude sketch of a family, their faces scribbled out, surrounded by dark, jagged shapes. The paper was brittle, yellowed, as if it had been there for decades. I burned it in the sink, but the smell of charred paper lingered, and the whispers grew into a low, mocking laugh. On the 7th night, the house turned hostile. I woke to a pressure on my chest, as if someone were sitting on me. The lamp was on, but its light flickered, casting erratic shadows. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, as a cold, bony hand grazed my arm. The touch was fleeting, but it left a mark, 3 thin scratches, red and stinging, on my forearm. The whispers were deafening now, chanting, "Turn it off, Eliza." "Let us in." I stumbled to the living room, clutching a flashlight, and called a friend, Sarah, begging her to come over. She arrived an hour later, skeptical but concerned. She saw the scratches, the marks on the walls, and the fear in my eyes. We sat in the kitchen, every light blazing, as I told her everything. Sarah suggested I was stressed, maybe hallucinating, but then the lights flickered and a low growl echoed from the hallway. Sarah's face paled, and she grabbed my hand. "We're leaving," she said, but the front door wouldn't open. The lock turned, but the door was stuck, as if held by an unseen force. We spent the night huddled in the living room, surrounded by lamps. At dawn, the door opened easily, and Sarah dragged me to her car. I stayed at her place that day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. My reflection in her bathroom mirror seemed wrong. My eyes too dark, my smile too wide. I returned to the house against Sarah's protests, driven by a need to understand. The basement was my last unexplored territory, a place I'd avoided since locking the mirror away. Armed with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, I descended the creaking stairs. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of mold and something metallic. The mirror leaned against the wall, uncovered, its surface gleaming in the flashlight's beam. I approached, and the reflection showed not just me, but the family from the newspaper clipping. Pale, eyeless faces staring back. I dropped the flashlight and the mirror's surface rippled like water. A hand reached out, cold fingers wrapping around my wrist. I screamed and slashed with the knife, shattering the mirror. Shards flew, and a wail filled the air, not from me, but from the house itself. Blood trickled from a cut on my hand, mixing with the glass on the floor. I ran upstairs, locking the basement door. The whispers were gone, replaced by an eerie silence. But the scratches on my arm burned, and I felt a presence behind me, closer than ever. That night, I slept with every light on, but the shadows seemed to move, forming shapes that vanished when I looked directly at them. Sarah insisted I see a priest, Father Daniels, who was known for handling unusual cases. He visited the house on the 9th night, his face grim as he sprinkled holy water and recited prayers. The air grew heavy, and the lights dimmed, though no one touched the switches. Father Daniels paused, his eyes fixed on the bedroom wall. The shadow hand was back, larger, its fingers curling as if beckoning. He whispered, "This is no ordinary haunting." He told me about a local legend, a creature that thrived in darkness, feeding on fear. It latched onto those who lived alone, using mirrors as doorways. The family from 1973 had tried to trap it by destroying the mirrors, but it only grew stronger. Father Daniels urged me to leave, but I was stubborn. This was my home, and I wouldn't be driven out. That night, I felt it again, the presence, now bold enough to linger in the light. Objects moved slightly, a book falling, a door creaking open. The scratches on my arm spread, forming a pattern like the ones on the walls. I called Father Daniels, but his phone went to voicemail. I later learned he'd been found unconscious in his car, muttering about shadows that wouldn't let go. On the 10th night, I decided to fight. I bought industrial floodlights, extension cords, and salt, lining the bedroom with a protective circle. I sat in the center, clutching a cross and a flashlight, every light blazing. The house was silent, but the air was electric, like a storm about to break. At midnight, the whispers returned, louder, angrier, chanting my name. The lights flickered, then went out, all at once. The floodlights, the lamps, even the flashlight. Darkness swallowed everything. I screamed, fumbling for matches, but the air grew thick, suffocating. Hands grabbed me, cold and unyielding, pulling me toward the wall where the shadow hand loomed. I fought, kicking and clawing, but the darkness was alive, a writhing mass of limbs and eyes. Then a voice, my own, but distorted, whispered, "You can't win." I lit a match, its feeble glow revealing a face inches from mine, eyeless, smiling. I threw the match, and the room erupted in flames. I don't know how I escaped, but I stumbled outside as the house burned, the wails of the unseen echoing in the night. The fire destroyed the house, leaving only charred rubble. The town called it an electrical fault, but I knew better. I moved in with Sarah, then to a new city, but the scars remained, literal and otherwise. The scratches on my arm never healed fully, a faint pattern that itched in the dark. Mirrors made me uneasy, and I avoided them, covering every reflective surface in my new apartment. I researched the creature, finding stories of similar entities in folklore, shadow beings that fed on fear, growing stronger in darkness. The family from 1973 hadn't vanished. They'd been consumed, their essence trapped in the house's walls. I wondered if I'd escaped or merely delayed the inevitable. At night, I heard faint whispers, distant but familiar, and my reflection sometimes flickered, showing a face that wasn't quite mine. I've learned to live with the fear, but I'll never sleep with the lights off again. The dark isn't empty, It's a doorway, a canvas for things that shouldn't exist. I keep my apartment lit, every bulb burning, even during the day. Power outages are my worst nightmare, and I have flashlights in every room. Sarah thinks I'm paranoid, but she didn't see the face in the flames, didn't feel the hands in the dark. If you're reading this, heed my warning. Check your house, your mirrors, your shadows. If you hear whispers or see scratches where they shouldn't be, leave. Don't wait for the darkness to show itself. Some things can't be fought, only fled. And whatever you do, keep the lights on. My story isn't one of triumph or resolution. It's a confession of survival, a testament to the terror that lingers in the dark. The house on Marrow Lane is gone, but its shadow clings to me. A reminder that some doors, once opened, never fully close. I share this not to scare you, but to save you. The world is full of places like that house, where the line between light and dark blurs, and what waits in the shadows is always watching. I don't know if I'll ever be free, but as long as I have light, I have hope. Keep your lights on, and maybe you'll keep the darkness at bay.